By the time the cuffs clicked on my son's wrists, the whiskey he'd just dosed for me was still sweating on the kitchen island, untouched and caught on camera. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I am 68 years old, a grandfather of 4, and I did not become a cautious man by accident. The truth is, caution is what saved my life the night my son tried to take it. He had always been my boy, the one who stole my work gloves and followed me into the garage during his mother's chemo, the one who cried so hard at 8 years old because he thought if he fixed the wobble in her bed that she would stop being sick. His name is Thomas, though everyone calls him Tom. I used to call him Tommy. I do not anymore. The night it happened, my house was quiet in that midwinter way when heat registers hum and window glass ticks as the temperature drops. My daughter had left with the kids after Sunday pot roast. She forgot 2 mittens and a plastic dinosaur, which still lay like a sentry on the kitchen island. I was rinsing plates in the sink when I heard Tom's truck on the gravel drive. He had a key, but he did not use it. He knocked like a salesman. "Dad," he said when I opened the door. "Got something for you." Under the porch light, his breath streamed white. He was handsome in a way that unsettled me lately, good teeth, neat beard, eyes that smiled while the mouth measured words. He held up a box. The label was familiar. Single malt from the Highlands, my favorite. A holiday gift, he said, because he felt bad for missing Christmas due to work, which was what he called gambling that year. "Come in," I said, because fathers forget bad weather faster than bad blood. We sat at the kitchen table where his mother and I had signed birthday cards, where I had guided his hand through long division, where the kids colored while I carved the roast. He opened the box. He admired the bottle the way he admired anything expensive. He poured 2 fingers for me and raised an empty glass for himself, with a shrug. "On antibiotics," he said. "Tooth." I lifted the glass out of habit more than thirst. The nose was sweet, like honey and smoke. It tasted like it always did. Then, a second flavor rolled in behind it, something bitter that did not belong. I did not swallow that second sip. I set the glass down, the room tilting a degree left. The edges of everything sharpened. Then softened. Then sharpened again. It is funny, what you notice when you are falling. The plastic dinosaur grinned at me from the island. The second hand on the kitchen clock stuttered over a scratch I have meant to fix for 6 years. Tom stood up too fast, chair legs screeching. He reached out and caught my elbow with a grip that was both gentle and impatient. "Easy," he said, like a nurse speaking to a difficult patient. "You okay?" I tried to answer and heard my voice as if it came from the bottom of the steps. Whatever was in the glass had found my legs. They did not belong to me anymore. He guided me to the floor with a tenderness that almost fooled me. He dialed emergency services with commendable speed. He told the dispatcher that his father was old, that these episodes happened sometimes, that he might be dehydrated. He used the word episode twice. His voice was the right blend of alarmed and cooperative. I remember staring at his shoelaces and thinking, my son learned to lie the way other children learn to whistle. In the ambulance, the world bent into a tunnel. Oxygen. Straps. A paramedic asking my name. The siren felt far away, like a childhood memory of a fire truck. At the hospital, bright lights went through my eyelids like they were paper. I heard the words, toxicology panel, and confusion, and fall risk. I heard my daughter's voice and the clatter of a vending machine. I heard Tom telling someone, he had one drink, he is not much of a drinker. I heard a nurse tell him, "You can wait here," in a tone I could not read. When I woke fully, the room had taken shape, the recliner under a pink blanket, the window with its view of the parking lot, the dry erase board where someone had written my name in cheerful handwriting. The 4-pump blinked at me. On the tray sat a cup of ice chips and a folded list of my medications. "Welcome back," said a doctor in blue scrubs, a woman not much older than my oldest granddaughter. "How do you feel?" "Like I lost a fight to a room," I said. "A good definition of dizziness," she replied, smiling briefly before her face settled into work. "We ran tests. Your electrolytes are off, but acceptable. Your liver panel is slightly elevated, likely stress-related. The toxicology screen shows metabolites that should not be present. Did you take anything unusual? Supplements? Herbal remedies? Something over the counter?" I thought of the bottle, the bitterness behind the smoke. "No," I said. "Okay," she said. "You were fortunate. The dosage was low, and we flushed it quickly. You will be here overnight for observation. We are also obligated to notify law enforcement when we see certain substances." "Law enforcement," I repeated, like a man learning a new word. "We are going to ask some difficult questions," she said gently. "Is there anyone who might want to harm you?" I could see my son's face when she asked it. I could see him at 8, holding a paper cup to catch screws from the deck board so he could look useful. I could see him at 17, crying in the garage after crashing my old motorcycle. I could see him at 34, jaw tight because I would not co-sign another loan. I could see him at my table, watching me drink. "I cannot imagine who," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. She wrote something on the dry erase board that made sense only to her. Then she nodded. "Rest. Someone will be by to check on you every hour." After she left, I pulled the blanket up to my chest like a man might pull up armor. My daughter, Ruth, came in with the small storm of a daughter in pain, the tight jawline, the careful hands, the way she touched my hair and then pretended she had adjusted the pillow to justify the tenderness. She asked me to tell her what happened, and I told her the part with the porch light and the box. I did not tell her about the second taste. "Dad," she said, the word a small plea, "why did you drink with him?" "He did not drink," I said. She stared at me. "Why did you drink in front of him?" "Because I wanted to believe we were still a father and a son, not a nail and a hammer. Because I still hold in my chest 1,000 small gods called memory. Because love is a trickster and looks like whiskey sometimes." "He is your brother," I said. It came out both answer and apology. "Do not make me choose what to call him." Ruth's eyes filled in a way that made me feel both grateful and guilty. "I am not making you choose anything," she said. "I am asking you to be careful. I am asking if I should lock the back door." "Yes," I said, because caution had nearly died in my kitchen. Law enforcement did visit. A uniformed officer with a notebook and a detective in plain clothes who watched me as if he were cross-referencing what I said with a file in his head. They asked about visitors. They asked about enemies. They asked about the bottle. I told them what anyone could have seen. They took notes and left me with a pamphlet about elder abuse that I folded until it was a square hard enough to dent my palm. At 2 in the morning, the hospital hush settled. Machines sighed. A janitor's bucket rattled down the hall. In the silence, I planned a murder. This is the part one am not proud of. It lives in a place inside me that smells like a wet cellar. I could blame the drugs, the fear, the humiliation of having a body that failed to stand up in my own kitchen. I could blame 40 years of other people's emergencies. The truth is simpler. I am a man. I was hurt. I wanted to hurt back. I did not sleep. I went over the steps like a man reviews blueprints. He had used my favorite brand. He had chosen familiarity. He had used bitterness to hide bitterness. He had been careful with quantities. I could be just as careful. I would invite him over. I would pour for him what he poured for me. I would watch him taste it and meet whatever eyes he had that day. It would be close-ended. It would be poetic. It would be justice no courthouse could parse. By morning, the plan felt clean as snow on an untraveled street. The plan began to rot the moment I touched my granddaughter's hair. The nurse had let Ruth bring Emily by for 10 minutes before school. Little Emily was 7 and had the disarming confidence of a child who believes all things broken can be fixed with a kiss and a bandage. She climbed into bed like she owned it. She announced that she had won the spelling bee and asked if hospital pancakes tasted different. Before she left, she kissed my cheek. Her hair brushed my chin. It smelled like the apple shampoo her mother loves. That scent did something to the wet cellar. It opened a door and let light in. I thought of the porch rail. I thought of a child running through a kitchen. I thought of a glass left where little hands explore. I thought of Tom's boy, 13 and angry at the world, who would drink anything forbidden just to show that he could. I thought of how revenge is not an arrow, clean and true. It is a grenade. It blows up everything nearby, whether it deserves it or not. After they went to school, I stared at the ceiling grid and told myself one true thing out loud. I will not become what he became. Saying it did not make it easy. It made it harder in a different direction. Because then I had to become something else, practical, methodical, persistent. There is a kind of revenge that does not require poison. It requires patience. When they discharged me, I did not go home first. I went to the office of a man named Henry Olmsted, who once worked 3 decades as a police detective and now worked for those of us who could not afford to pretend everything is fine. He had seen his share of petty crimes and durable tragedies. He had that notorious gift of cops, seeing the seams. He did not smile when I told him what I suspected. He did not ask why. He slid a legal pad across the desk and said, "Assignments." We made a list. He would pull Tom's finances from the legal places that show what people try to hide and from the other places as well. He would talk to the bartender at Fielders who knew which regulars asked for their tab to be next time. He would show his face in the kinds of rooms where people think debts vanish if you speak softly. He would find out if my son had obtained certain substances, and how often, and from whom. He would do it quietly. I had assignments of my own. I would change locks. I would pull cameras from the garage and install them on the eaves. I would tell my daughter nothing that gave her reason to worry about her brother and reason to fight with her husband at dinner. I would call my attorney. I would revise my will so that nothing in my estate could be used as a reward for a son who believed my death would solve his problems. The most difficult assignment was this: I would invite my son to dinner. I would keep inviting him. I would act like a father who wants reconciliation, because fathers who want reconciliation do not scare predators, they encourage them. If Tom were going to try again, it would not be at a bar with cameras and the chance of strangers. It would be in a place he thought he owned. It would be in my kitchen. In the days that followed, clumps of truth came loose like thawed clay. Henry called with an update that was not news to anyone who had been watching Tom for 10 years. Gambling debt. Old and new. Small ones stacked on large ones. He owed money to a man who ran loans out of the back of a tire shop, a man who smiled with his mouth closed. He owed something darker to two younger men who did not smile at all. He had taken out a life insurance policy on me 3 months before Christmas, small enough to look harmless, large enough to make a reckless man stop doing math and start doing fantasy. He had 3 cards maxed and one he used only at restaurants where he met a woman who was not his wife. Motive is not elegant. It is a collage. I kept my end of the assignments. I called Tom and spoke of forgiveness like it was something you can put out on a plate with cheddar and crackers. He came less often than I liked and more often than I feared. He brought my favorite brand like he was daring me to say the word favorite. Sometimes he poured himself a soda and made a joke about the antibiotics. Sometimes he drank water straight from the tap like a boy. He tested doors with his eyes, not his hands. He tested me with pauses. We improvised. Henry introduced me to a detective named Angela who wore her hair pulled tight so it did not curtly answer anyone before she could. She had the graveyard patience of someone who knows that the worst crimes often look small at first. She did not promise me anything. She asked for permission to set a trap. I said yes. The trap had one rule: do not make it complicated. That rule saved countless officers, and it saved me. We scheduled a family dinner. Ruth and her husband would bring the kids. Tom and his wife, Melissa, would come to eat like we used to. I would grill in the snow because nothing says normal like a man insisting he can still cook in January. There would be a bottle on the counter, the brand he had used, because that is the only song he knew. There would be a glass set aside. There would be a camera that did not look like a camera and a small dye, food grade, harmless, that would stain the inside of a dropper bulb the shade of blue you find in a summer sky. The dye was for me, not for court. I needed to see. The day arrived bitter and sunny. Snow squeaked underfoot. My breath burned in my nostrils. Inside, the house glowed the way only a house with children can glow, coats piled on chairs, comics fanned open, the smell of garlic and butter. I moved through the warmth carrying a plate of grilled chicken and sausage, as if fathers carry meals instead of worry. Tom was late and did not apologize. He came in with the storm, cheeks red, shoulders hunched. He kissed his wife's forehead in a way that said they both understood the choreography. He clapped his son on the shoulder with too much force. He looked around my kitchen as if he were reaching for a memory stored high on a shelf. "That the good stuff?" he asked, nodding at the bottle. "It is," I said. I poured a glass for myself. I did not drink it. I set it on the island next to the dinosaur, which had not moved in weeks. The kids were in the living room, within earshot. Melissa asked Ruth about soccer schedules. We were a photograph of a family. I watched Tom from the corner of my eye the way a man watches a dog he does not know. He moved through the room like gravity tugged him toward the island. He picked up the bottle. He read the label like tasting notes could erase other notes. He laughed softly at something only he heard. When he thought no one was looking, he reached into his coat pocket. Habit did the rest. The move was practiced. Fingers, cap, a little puff of breath. The dropper he pulled out was what you buy at any pharmacy for B vitamins or cough tinctures. That ordinary is what makes evil so easy. He tilted the dropper over my glass. A bead bulged. It fell, neat as a promise. The bead left a blue ghost in the thin rubber of the bulb where the harmless dye had waited for it. The camera caught the angle of his shoulder as it shifted left to hide the motion from the dining room. It caught the intent in his jaw. It caught the way his eyes met mine in the reflection of the microwave door, a half-second flare of calculation followed by calm. In the next half-second, two things happened that nobody in this family will ever forget. My grandson ran into the kitchen, skidding on socked feet, because he had heard the word brownies. He reached for the glass because it looked full and forbidden. He was fast. He has always been fast. And Detective Angela stepped into the doorway, badge in one hand, her voice carrying the weight of every courtroom and every kitchen she has stood in. "Thomas Harris," she said, "do not touch that glass." To her credit, she did not draw her weapon. She did not need it. The sound of her name on my son's full name pinned him to the floor better than any nail. The kitchen went quiet in the kind of way that changes families. When silence comes like that, it becomes an inheritance. Ruth stood up from the table so quickly her chair fell, the bang bouncing off framed photos of birthdays and first days of school. Melissa gasped and then put her hand to her mouth, as if she could pull the sound back inside. The children froze. Tom straightened slowly, as if he were remembering how to be standing. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He closed it again. I watched his eyes look for exits in places where there were none. Angela moved in a cadence I recognize now as mercy working at speed. She told my grandson to go to his mother. She asked Tom to place the dropper on the counter. She asked him to put his hands behind his back. He did, as if familiarity with the request had finally found him. Another officer appeared from the hallway where the back door had been checked for drafts. The cuffs clicked. I do not remember sitting down, but I found myself in my chair at the head of the table, gripping the edge so hard my fingers hurt. My daughter was kneeling beside my grandson, her hands on his shoulders, her face incandescent with a fury I have never seen on her and hope to never see again. Melissa began to cry real tears instead of careful ones. The children cried because children cry when adults go suddenly and badly still. The air smelled like garlic and heat and the end of something. What happens next, in a story like this, has words I never had to say before: evidence bag, rights read, chain of custody, arraignment. There were words I knew: bail, attorney, statement. There were words that cut: conspiracy, attempt. There were words we did not say aloud but all heard: betrayed, orphaned, dead man's glass. When you ask for the motive, you are asking for a map to a swamp. There were money problems, yes. There were people who said his name with a curl at the end, and you do not want your name said that way if you still hope to sleep. There was a policy for a sum that is not enough to cure a heart of wanting more. There was the way he loved risk like other men love the quiet. There was the way grief had hollowed him after his mother died, and men who are hollow collect bad company the way empty rooms collect echoes. There was a woman who fed his worst parts because his worst parts made her feel necessary. There was the way I had answered the phone too many times because I could not bear to hear a different kind of ring. The tests on the glass spoke for themselves, and Angela promised me I would not have to hear the recipe. "You do not want to know," she said, and I believed her. They linked him to purchases and to searches and to a man at the tire shop who suddenly wanted to tell the truth now that a badge had learned his name. They found financial threads that led from my accounts to places I never wanted my money to go. They played the camera footage in a room that smelled like coffee and dust. They had, as the phrase goes, enough. My son's lawyer tried to turn my caution into paranoia. He tried to turn the die into trickery. He tried to turn the dropper into vitamins. He tried to turn my kitchen into a stage where I performed helplessness and control at once. The judge is paid to know the difference between theater and fact. The jury is paid nothing. They still knew. On the day the verdict came, I wore the same tie I wore to Tom's high school graduation. Ruth sat beside me in a blue cardigan her mother would have admired. Melissa did not attend. The courtroom felt both claustrophobic and enormous. The clerk said words in a flat tone, the way people say the weather on the radio. I stared at my son's neck, the place where a man's pain often collects, just above the collar. When the word guilty left the clerk's mouth, Tom closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked exactly like a sleeping toddler, lashes dark on cheek. I thought of how he learned to tie his shoes. I thought of how small a hand can be in yours and still feel like everything. I did not cheer. Rage had been replaced by something heavier long before that day. People think justice relieves you like a pill. It does not. It permits you to stop holding your breath. It lets you exhale sadness without worrying you will drown in it. It lets you sleep in a bed where you are the only one in danger. It lets you look at your grandchildren and know that a glass on a counter will just be a glass. After the trial, after the sentencing, after the way friends leave casseroles on back steps because no one knows what to say, after the way Sundays find their own shape again, there is the work of living. I did not expect that work to fight me so hard. Recovery, my doctor told me, is not just letting your body clear what nearly killed it. It is letting your mind look at the kitchen table without flinching. It is walking past the cabinet with the good bottles and feeling nothing except the mild, golden ache of memory. It is telling your daughter that she did nothing wrong. It is telling your granddaughter that spelling bees are still more important than court dates. It is telling yourself that the word father is not a failure but a job. My health returned the way morning returns in winter, late, then sudden. I stopped getting dizzy when I bent to tie my shoes. My appetite came back, not in a rush, but in a series of small, rational hungers that did not surprise me. Sleep found me again, clean and merciful. I walked the block every afternoon, hands open, head bare, the sun an indifferent healer. I went to my late wife's grave and told her what had happened in the only way I know how, which is to read the names on the nearby stones until language finds me. I did not do it, I told her. I wanted to. I did not. People asked me if I forgave him. Forgiveness is a word that fits too easily in mouths that never had to say goodbye to a son while he was still alive. I tell them the truth, I am working on the parts one can carry. I am working on the parts that are mine. I am not working on the parts that are not. There is a liberty in that clarity that feels like standing up from a chair you have sat in too long. I put my affairs in order in a way that honored love without rewarding harm. I called my lawyer. We built something that protects the children from the mistakes of their parents. We put in triggers and trustees. I learned language I never thought I would need. I am not ashamed of that. I am grateful to have lived long enough to find wisdom in paperwork. Ruth and I made new rituals. Sunday pot roast remained, but we moved birthdays to my daughter's house, where the light falls differently and the kitchen island does not hold shadows. I kept my porch light on, because a home should not greet you in darkness. The plastic dinosaur finally left the counter and took up residence on a shelf in the garage, where it guards a row of old paint cans like a tiny, ridiculous sentry. The dog, Ruth's new rescue, all ears and optimism, learned that Grandpa drops more scraps than anyone else. On a spring afternoon that smelled like rain and cut grass, I sat on my porch while the youngest two grandchildren drew chalk cities on the driveway. The oldest one rode his bike in slow, thoughtful circles, the way teenagers circle sorrow. He stopped at the foot of the steps and looked up at me. "Grandpa," he said, "are we safe now?" Children ask the hard questions as if they are offering you a glass of water. I considered all the ways I could lie efficiently. I considered all the ways I could tell the truth cruelly. I chose the middle path that allows sleep. We are safer, I said. We are safe enough. He nodded. He went back to his bike. He did a wheelie because gravity had not disappointed him yet. The porch rail where the sweating glass once stood has a stain I cannot scrub out. You would not notice it if you were not looking for it. I notice it. I leave it. It is a sentence written in the house's hand. It tells me the only kind of revenge that ever lasts, living long, living honest, and refusing to let a single bad act teach your hands how to keep doing harm. A few times a year, I get a letter in my son's handwriting. He writes about the weather in words so precise I can see the window in his cell. He tells me they have a library. He tells me he is taking a class that will mean something when the door opens and he has to call someone for work who does not owe him anything. He does not ask me for money. He asks me to send photographs of the children. He asks me to tell his mother he is sorry. I take the letters to the cemetery. I read them out loud. I do not know if she can hear me. I know that I can hear myself, and that matters. On the day the apple tree bloomed again for the first time since the winter of the glass, I stood under its branches and let the petals fall onto my shoulders like small, lawful things. I thought about the man I almost became. He is not a ghost I will ever entirely banish, but he is no longer welcome in my kitchen. He lives on a distant road I decided not to take, and every morning I wake up grateful to the little apple scent of my granddaughter's hair for showing me the turn. I still keep a good whiskey in the house. It sits unopened, more symbol than drink, a quiet assertion that I will not let fear occupy every shelf. On the label there are fields and mist and the suggestion of humankind making peace with time. When friends come over, we pour coffee. When the children are here, we pour milk and orange juice. Sometimes, when the house is empty and the sun is low and I can hear the neighbor's wind chimes, I pour 2 fingers into a glass, lift it to my lips, and smell. I put it back down. I do not need to drink to remember. Justice did not restore my youth or my illusions. It restored something more practical, the habit of joy. Ruth's laugh in my kitchen. The dog's nails skittering across the tile. The steady good ache in my legs after I mow the back lawn. The sound of my phone at dinner time and the certainty, rare and priceless, that nobody is calling to sell me my own life back at interest. So that is my story. A son tried to kill his father with the kindness of a bottle. The father tried to kill his son with poetry. The father did not. He chose police over poison. He hired someone who understood darkness better than he did. He learned that motive is a patchwork quilt made of greed, grief, and the desire to skip steps. He watched Handcuffs close, and it did not feel like victory. It felt like a job completed, a danger removed, and a door that needed closing because children have a way of running toward light. When I go to sleep now, I think of the porch light. I think of the stain on the rail. I think of the words my wife said to me the last time the sky turned orange over the maple in our yard. Take care of them, she said. They will need you. She did not say, hurt him back. She did not say, teach him a lesson. She knew what I know now, that the bravest men in a family are not always the ones with the quickest fists, but the ones who hold the line against their own worst ideas. We are safe enough. And that is not a small thing.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, Please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.